The cold wind is whispering across snow-covered plains. Once thousands of mammoths roamed freely here. Today, only a small herd remains, slowly moving forward through the melting ice. The ice is gradually disappearing. The cold climate is no longer what it used to be. And they don't even realize that they are slowly moving toward their final journey. This is the story of how mammoths disappeared from this world. This did not happen in a single day. Nor was it caused by one great catastrophe. Rather, small changes over time, some decisions and some circumstances, eventually led to the extinction of this magnificent creature. But to understand their end, we must return to the past. So, what exactly were mammoths? For modern humans, they have almost become a legend. Very large, hairy elephants with long and curved tusks. And they often could be seen slowly wandering across icy plains. But thousands of years ago, for ancient humans, mammoths were not a story. They were a part of their daily lives. In reality, mammoths were close relatives of today's elephants. Some species were very large, while others were relatively smaller. Among them, the most famous was the woolly mammoth. Its height at the shoulders was about 3 meters. Its body was covered with thick brown fur, and beneath that fur, there was a thick layer of fat that protected it in extreme cold. Its ears were relatively small, so that body heat could be retained, and its tusks, long and curved, which could grow up to 4 meters long. Mammoths usually lived in herds. In these herds, mothers, their young and young males were included. They kept traveling in search of grazing lands and searched for dry grass, moss, and roots. Their world was certainly harsh, but they had become accustomed to that environment. All around, snow, strong winds, frozen plains, and landscapes stretching far into the distance. Along with them, other giant animals also existed on this land. Woolly rhinoceroses, very large bison, sharp-toothed predatory cats, and cave-dwelling bears. The last ice age was actually an era of gigantic creatures. The earth was cold but full of life. For humans, mammoths were extremely important. They provided food, their bones were used to make tools, their skins were used, and their tusks were also valuable. Hunting a single mammoth could provide food for weeks. For our ancient ancestors, this meat was not a luxury. It was a means of survival. They cooked the meat over fire, sometimes preserved it by smoking, and tried to store it for longer periods in different ways. The muscles obtained from mammoths were used to make ropes. Their skins were used to prepare tents, and their bones were used to build shelters. At some places, entire houses made from mammoth bones have also been discovered, which were covered with skins. Their drawings have also been found in caves of Europe and Asia. This shows that humans did not only hunt them, they observed them closely, learned about them, and also told stories about them. For the people of that time, mammoths were just as important as horses or cows are for us today. But no matter how powerful a creature may be, it does not last forever. The life of mammoths depended on ice. As long as the icy world existed, they survived as well. But the Earth never remains the same. The climate is always changing. Around 12,000 years ago, the Ice Age began to end. Temperatures slowly started to rise. Glaciers began to retreat, sea levels started to rise, and those vast icy plains began to change. Dry grass started to decrease, and in its place, forests and marshlands began to form. Some animals adapted themselves to the new environment. Some migrated to other places. But mammoths were made for extreme cold. Their bodies were suited for constant freezing conditions, not for a warming world. The world was becoming more humid and greener. Now imagine a large herd of mammoths trying to survive in this changing world. The climate has changed. The land is no longer as fertile as before. And young mammoth calves are struggling to find food because the grass that once existed everywhere has now become very scarce. Old migration routes have changed. Where there were once icy plains, there are now rivers, lakes, and deep mud. The regions are shrinking. Now mammoths must share the best grazing lands with other herbivorous animals. At the same time, the changing climate does not only bring a shortage of food, it also brings another danger: diseases. Parasites that once could not survive in extreme cold, now with the changing climate, slowly begin to spread. And thus, the lives of these giant creatures become even more difficult. Less severe winters mean longer and hotter summers. And when summers become longer, insects and dangerous microbes also begin to grow more rapidly. For a mammoth, 1 year might feel just like the last. Seasons come and pass. But in reality, the Earth is slowly changing. And if we look at time on the scale of centuries, we realize that everything has changed. That world, which once belonged to the mammoth, slowly begins to disappear. The herds gradually become smaller. Some isolated populations quietly vanish without a trace. But there was another character in this story. A small, agile, and seemingly weaker animal. Humans. As the climate began to change, humans were changing too. Their weapons had become more effective than ever before. Ancient humans, with their weapons, slowly moved toward higher ground in the forests. Hunters knew how to use the landscape, how to set ambushes, and how to take advantage of the animal's fear. An adult mammoth was an extremely dangerous opponent. Just one attack was enough to kill a human. When a herd panicked, a cliff, a frozen lake, or a swamp could turn the mammoth's own strength into a trap against it. We do not have evidence that humans alone wiped out the mammoths. But it is certain that wherever humans arrived, large animals often began to decline. This was not just a coincidence. Shrinking habitats, declining food sources, and increasing hunting. Each disappearing herd was like erasing a part of the future. There is another detail that makes their story even more fragile. That detail is the size of groups. When a species begins to decline, it does not suddenly disappear from everywhere. Rather, its large herds begin to diminish first. Small and isolated populations remain in those corners of the world, where conditions are still relatively better. In the case of the mammoth, the same thing happened. Some of them, these refuge populations, remained on distant cold islands. where mammoths survived much longer compared to the rest of the world. Even when mammoths had disappeared from the continents thousands of years ago on remote islands, their small world still remained. Their small dwarf mammoths still wandered quietly. But living in small numbers and isolation comes with a cost. Fewer individuals mean less genetic diversity. This means that diseases, defects, and weaknesses can spread more easily. Just one storm, one particularly harsh winter, or a disease brought by other animals, or humans, is enough, and an entire population can be wiped out. Eventually, even these last silent islands became empty. That land, which once echoed with the footsteps of mammoths, had now become desolate. And on Earth, the last mammoth also died, without knowing that it was the last. For it, this was just another winter. For the history of the Earth, it was like the end of a chapter. Yet mammoths did not completely disappear, at least not from the Earth's memory. The ice has preserved many of their bodies. In Siberia and in Alaska, almost complete mammoths have been discovered within the permanently frozen ground. Not just bones, entire bodies. Skin, hair, muscles. The food inside their stomachs. Even their eyes can still be recognized. Some small mammoth calves have also been found, as if they were once playing together. Some hunters, or those who searched for ivory along the northern rivers, found ancient mammoth tusks within the layers of earth and ice. Sometimes the ground breaks, the ice melts, and suddenly, from a wall of soil, a massive, hair-covered limb appears. A limb that had been hidden there for thousands of years. For scientists, these remains are a valuable treasure of information. From their stomachs, it can be determined what they used to eat. From their bones, their way of life can be understood. Their skin and tusks tell us about the environment in which they grew. With the help of their DNA, they can be compared with modern elephants, and their lineage can be reconstructed. Every mammoth found in the ice is a strong piece of evidence. It is not just a dry fossil found in a book. It was a real living being that walked and felt cold, hunger, and fear. It lived with its herd and protected its young. There is one final part of their story that is directly connected to us: DNA. Today we are able to read their genetic code. And some scientists are trying to find out whether elephants can be created that have some mammoth-like traits. It would not be a true mammoth, but rather an elephant, adapted to cold climates, with more hair and more fat on its body, so that it could survive in environments like the past. It is an experimental idea that is widely debated. Some people see it as a way to better understand the past and help the environment, while others consider it a dangerous interference with nature. But the real point is something else. For thousands of years, humans have been drawing images of mammoths on the walls of caves. Today, they are recreating them in computers, in the form of DNA. This shows how much power we have gained over the world around us. But the story of the mammoth is not just an interesting tale of the past. It is also a reflection of the present. Mammoths did not go extinct for a single reason. The climate changed, their habitats shrank, and hunting increased. Their herds kept getting smaller until they were too few to compete. It was a combination of many factors, and these same factors are now putting many other species at risk. rhinoceroses, elephants, lions, polar bears. These are the animals that seem ordinary to us today, just as mammoths once seemed to our ancestors. But in the future, they may exist only as pictures in books or as skeletons in museums. If you ever see a mammoth skeleton in an exhibition, pause for a moment. Do not look at it as just an ancient creature. Behind those bones is an entire herd walking across the snow. Calves are with their mothers. There are stormy nights and long journeys over ice. That skeleton is proof that even the largest creatures can disappear. And it reminds us that today, we are the ones deciding the future of many animals. We can either continue to destroy their habitats and species as if they will never end, or we can decide to protect what still remains. Mammoths will never return as they once were. Their icy world is gone forever. But their story still exists today, preserved in ice, in the earth, and in museums. But the question is not about the mammoth. The question is about us. Are we repeating the same mistake? Are we also losing those animals that are still with us? What seems common today may tomorrow exist only in books. This earth is not just ours. It belongs to all who breathe upon it. The decision is in our hands, to preserve or to lose forever. So the next time you see an animal, remember, it may be writing the final chapter of its existence.